Hi, everyone. My name is Inez. I'm a talent brand consultant based out of Singapore. And essentially what I do is I work with recruitment marketing. I work with clients to execute their recruitment marketing communications on LinkedIn. I've been doing this for a few years right now, but prior to that, I've also spent a couple of years in B2B marketing. And the concept of advocacy is no stranger to B2B marketers, especially when you have no deep pockets for marketing communications. So I think the idea of getting people to speak on behalf of your company is really effective for a lot of organizations as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Tash Stoeckel. I'm a colleague of Inez, working in the talent brand consulting team as well, but focused on Australia and New Zealand for LinkedIn. My background is in recruitment and employer branding. I was a LinkedIn Talent Solutions client for many years and then moved into the LinkedIn talent acquisition and branding team. If I can just ask everyone to mute for me, that would be great. Thank you. So I come at the employee advocacy topic from a different angle to Inez, but the purpose of today is for us to share our perspectives with you from both a marketing and more of a recruitment and an HR perspective as well.
So Tash, I'm actually quite excited about the session today because we're coming in from two different angles. So I come from the marketing angle and then yourself from talent acquisition. And I think with the concept of advocacy, like I said before, it's really no strangers to us in marketing because you won't be able to speak about your product or service if you don't use it or love it. So how has that impacted talent acquisition?
It's really had an ongoing impact, Inez, from what I know from the clients that I work with here at LinkedIn, as well as my own experience. So it's a great way for those that have minimal budget, who are really looking for high impact with their employer brand strategy to really use their employees to advocate for what they are as a place to work.
So let's just start with, here's what we will cover in today's session. We'll talk to why, it's important to begin with, why a program like this is important to begin with, and then what does great look like. We'll share with you a couple of case studies, and then also how do we then even start engaging your employees. And then lastly, we'll wrap up with a step-by-step guide so that you could walk away today to kickstart this and unlock the power of your employees. Now, it's going to be a packed agenda filled with insights to inform your business cases, for employee advocacy, but also we'll make sure that you'll have practical tips and a range of examples to learn from.
I hear there's some audio issues. It's Tash here. Please let us know if you continue to face audio issues. Thank you. Just to get started, we're just going to discuss really the why of employee advocacy now. So really thinking about the concept of advocacy, it's really about speaking on behalf of someone, something, or a cause. And we know about advocacy from a customer perspective. If you look at the marketing funnel, it no longer ends at conversion into a lead or a customer. Instead, after conversion comes advocacy because it fuels repeat business and customers. So from a talent brand perspective, employee advocacy essentially means having employees talk on behalf of the organization, either to promote its products and services, or most recently in specific nature with the employer brand strategies that companies have. It's really talking about companies as a place to work and those employees being the most credible source to talk about this themselves. So we'll start talking about the key trends in the market that have really been creating both a buzz and a need for employee advocacy. So this quote is from Jennifer Jones-Newbill at Dell. So she is the Senior Manager of Global Candidate Attraction, Engagement and Experience at Dell. And she really knows what she's talking about. So when she says, if you help brand your people, they will help brand your company, she's so right. This really is the best way to encourage a culture of your employees sharing your peers' successes and the organization's successes as well. Dell actually have their own social media community university, and since 2011, Dell has actually been, as part of this, offering some voluntary 8-hour training on social media to its 100,000 person workforce. So in this, employees can become certified by the company's Social Media and Community University, informally known as SMAC-U, and once certified in SMAC-U, employees participate in Power Hour refresher trainings to keep their social media skills fresh. And more companies are really starting to see value in this approach as adopted by Dell. It's so much about elevating your employees and their voices. We've got many more examples of this to come over the course of the webcast. Some of you may have seen this before. This is some data directly from the Edelman Global Trust Barometer this year, which really shows that employees are more trusted. They are the most trusted advocates for any topic. We've just picked out 2 from the report here. And aside from the greater reach that employees have in their networks, which we'll discuss a bit further in a second, people tend to trust people like themselves. So really, employees being your best, most impactful advocates makes absolute sense. With an employee advocacy program and a focus on that, your message is therefore not getting out just at a greater scale, it's also more trusted. So that's a powerful 1-2 punch that really presents a business case. So thinking about that scale and that reach, as you can see here, and you may already have heard of this from the invites that we sent you for the webcast, employees have on average 10 times more connections in their networks than the company itself. As an example, a client of mine has about 40 people, so a relatively small business, and they have about 5,000 followers on LinkedIn. When they then think about their employees' networks, they have 40,000 first-degree connections. So in this instance, their employees have about 8 times the network of the company. And what we're increasingly seeing is that network, as more and more people become active, is only increasing. And of course, thinking about the 10 times more impact that they have, what we mean by this is that those employees that do share your content on LinkedIn or other social channels are going to have a huge impact on the employer brand and how the company is perceived by candidates. Shares by employees have an impact of about 10 times the average of those by companies. And across LinkedIn, what we see is that while only maybe 2% of employees may share a company's social content, the updates on their page, the tweets that they post, they're responsible for about 20% of overall social engagement.
So it's very little surprise then to learn that candidates are getting the most of that information that informs their career choices from sources other than organizational communications itself. So in fact, the Corporate Executive Board, CEB, found that about 80% of the information that they use to determine whether to apply are from other sources than the company itself. And this includes information from like the most trusted sources, from speaking to connections, user reviews, trade platforms, external press, most of which are sourced from, as you've guessed it, employees. And if you think about it from a candidate journey, there is a lot more that goes into influencing their decision and to move them to take the appropriate action. So if you learned about a position on a job portal, for example, you will probably have to do a lot more research, and that involves usually speaking to a connection of someone that you know. And so even pre-LinkedIn social media days, the employee referral program has always been traditionally regarded as the best source of hires. And it's really about putting your reputation online, isn't it? If I was an employee, I'll only think of referring someone to the organization only if I know if he or she is the right fit. So you fast forward now to the age of social media, this impact is further exploded in terms of scale and just the amount of sheer speed of access. In fact, here at LinkedIn, we tried to quantify the impact from our own member behavior, and we saw that attrition rate, in this case reflected by members changing companies within 6 months, is up to about 37% lower if it was impacted by an employee.
So employee referrals are really widely accepted as a strong source of hire. From my background in LinkedIn and before LinkedIn, I know for sure, as well as the clients that I work with, that measurable factors like quality of hire, time to hire, and tenure of hires show that continually they are just the best source of hire. But it's really intuitive when you think about it. The people that are currently in the roles in the organization, they do have the best gauge on whether a candidate would perform well. And referring employees can really help close candidates quicker. I know this from my experience that it's a great way to leverage referrers when you're trying to close a candidate and be competitive against other organizations. And people want to stay at companies where they know and like their co-workers. So for talent acquisition leaders, they really are seeing benefits of hiring via employee referrals because they really do hire better candidates faster, and those candidates ultimately stay much longer at their company. And we see at about a strong rate of about 95% of talent acquisition leaders are really describing referrals as an important part of their recruitment process now. And at LinkedIn, as we think about our own story, about 30% of our hires come from referrals, and we're trying to increase that even more. And our experience is that by prioritizing referrals, that can really help accelerate the performance of referrals as a source of hire when they join your organization. So we're now going to start talking a little bit about what great looks like with some more examples similar to Dell, just of really companies that are doing employee advocacy exceptionally well. So Adecco is a recruitment firm, and they got employees involved really through features and spotlights. So Adecco spotlighted employees by their CEO for 1 month initiative, which really turned what was a global internship program into a brand to be reckoned with. So you can see here on the screen that this had a lot of CEO sponsorship and mentoring and drove a lot of social sharing through the usage of a hashtag CEO1month. The LinkedIn profile photos of those people on the internship program, this CEO for 1 month initiative, those LinkedIn profile pictures were branded, and the headlines of employee profiles involved in the initiative are updated to read CEO for 1 month. And turning to LinkedIn's own story, a story dear to my heart, back in 2015, early 2015, we launched hashtag LinkedIn Life, which was really around centralizing a lot of the social sharing that was already underway through employees and really capturing that through one mechanism. So since launch back in early 2015, we've had over 11,500 posts on Instagram against hashtag LinkedIn Life, thousands of tweets, daily LinkedIn updates. And all of these are from 19 different cities around the world, reaching about 1.2 million people monthly through those updates. So our social media toolkit really helped drive this. So this was a toolkit that guided alternate hashtag usage at different LinkedIn internal events so that we could really show the power of hashtag LinkedIn Life and show the power of employee advocacy via a centralized initiative. Furthermore, continuing on LinkedIn's own story, we have just recently transitioned and are in the process of transitioning to an exciting new version of our careers pages, which is the house of your employer brand on LinkedIn. And so our own LinkedIn talent acquisition team were part of the initial testing phase of the solution. The new page, so the new next generation career page format, has new features like company photos that are uploaded by employees for an admin of the page to review and then post themselves. Employee perspectives, which are the opportunity for blog posts from your own employees who post blog posts on LinkedIn to have that featured on the page. And we also have Meet the Leader spotlights. So this highlights the LinkedIn profiles of business leaders at the front and center, and once again is controlled by the page admin. So this is an opportunity to really showcase your leaders as a social leader front and center for your organization. Now, we know that these features are really important, particularly in the theme of employee advocacy, as people really do work for people. It's a cliche for a reason. They want to better identify with the current employees that work where you are and aspire to be the leaders in that business. So this sort of authenticity and showcasing your employees and leaders as social advocates is so key. Our LinkedIn talent acquisition and employer brand team used the opportunity of the transition to this next generation careers page format to really review their content and really make sure that it really brought to life exactly what it was like to work at LinkedIn. So they've involved LinkedIn employees in competitions to submit photos for the new LinkedIn careers page and nominations for employee blog posts to showcase. They also involved their local in-country experts to confirm the different leaders to be spotlighted on each geographical page view for the global LinkedIn careers page.
So Tash, I actually do love this new version a lot, and because there are just so many placeholders for multimedia like photos and videos to showcase your employees and live in the organization. It's just such a good platform to talk and showcase your unique voice, your unique brand voice, and the multimedia carousel actually really helps bring your brand to life. And in fact, we've actually recently ran a beta with about 20 customers. And when you go into that page, each of those pages itself, you can definitely see how different those brand voices are from each other. So we all know that employees are an important channel, but before you go off and create a program that you want them to deliver on, let's at least make sure that we give them something positive to talk about. Now, your employees have to be happy, right? You'll have to have a culture where employees are engaged and where they're excited to go to work. If employees are not really engaged, the chances of them getting behind a program like this will be very much diminished. In fact, employee engagement is essential, and having happy employees is obviously crucial for this to work, because only people who are happy in their roles are happy to talk about and share their experience at the company. And if your employees don't buy into what you're doing as a business, then they are really going to struggle to sell and amplify them to your customers. Obviously, you will also need a passion of culture and trust. For example, if you're worried that your employees will go nuclear, then it really begs the question of why do you even not trust them to say the right things in the first place? Do you even have the right employees? And if your employees aren't your biggest advocates, then I'm afraid you probably would have a bigger problem than trying to run a program like this. So what makes them want to do this and do this naturally and willingly? The last thing you want is for your employees to be forced into any of such activities, because the inauthenticity will quickly show through. Now, according to the global panel study, when we asked why employees would even want to do this, a lot of it is a result of frequent over-communication, and communications that keep them informed and feel valued, as well as make them feel like they are doing meaningful work. Now, going back to our own organization, LinkedIn, I've worked in several companies all throughout my professional life, and I dare say that LinkedIn, although it's probably one of the biggest, it's also the most communicative one that I've experienced. Now, we hear from our leadership across a myriad of different platforms on such a regular basis. Besides our company all hands, which happens twice a month, we also receive digestible videos from our sales leaderships, summarizing updates, key directional changes, etc., so that we are all kept in the loop.
I think for me, as a millennial, and as someone who's recruited a number of millennials over the last 8 years in recruitment and HR, I do see this particularly being key when we think about millennials becoming an increasing part of the workforce. So they are much more purpose-driven and a much more socially active generation. So this level of transparency and authenticity that you see that Inez has described, that I experience as well at LinkedIn, is really, really important to that millennial generation that are really critical to hire.
So whether you have 10 employees or 10,000, the fact is that there is a marketing machine that you could leverage. Few companies are doing this well, though, but it is a huge opportunity to enhance your employer brand strategy. Now, getting your people to engage is tough, but when they do, it's mutually beneficial. When employees share knowledge across social media, not only do they establish themselves as thought leaders, they ultimately help you attract and recruit they will help you. They ultimately will help you attract, recruit, and hire talent. So it is a two-way street. Now, in this section, we are going to provide you with a framework and lots of creative ideas. Now, I'm going to take you through 4 easy steps to, running and executing a successful employee advocacy program. Step one is obviously to build a foundation before you educate and prep your employees. The third is really about getting them engaged so that they could run the program for you. And then lastly, of course, it's really to measure and improve the program over time. Now, the first step to establishing an employee engagement program is to build the right foundation and structure. Many companies start by defining a social media policy. Now, elaborate on what is okay to share and what is not. Giving guidelines to your employees will help them feel more comfortable about actively promoting your company. You may also want to nominate employee champions to help get people on board of the program. Now, if you know employees who are already very active on social media and sharing news about your company already, then that's probably a good place to start. You can position this as a leadership opportunity and get those employees involved. Create a content distribution plan is also critical. So know when and what type of content you're going to share with your employees and your followers. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a while. Get the ball rolling early with new employees and add things to your onboarding process, like asking them to update their LinkedIn profiles and give them a tip sheet for sharing company content. And lastly, you may want to put an incentive program in place as well. Perhaps each month, the employee who shares the most or garnered the most engagement will get a prize. That prize doesn't have to be expensive or big, but as we know, a little recognition does go a long way. Now, IBM has turned to its employees and used the wiki to create a set of social media guidelines. There is a new process, and there is always a new process to update every few years in light of the ever-evolving technologies and online social tools. So to ensure that they remain current to the needs of the employees. Now, the results are clear-cut guidelines regarding what cannot be shared and how the company communicates. IBMers also express themselves and let their voice shine. They also demonstrate their skills and creativity on social media. And then also, I think employees are also encouraged and inspired to challenge and share their ideas via blogging and social media. So you're not there to control, always remember that. It always boils down to just offering employees guardrails to help guide them on what's okay to share and what's not. So some elements of social media policies can include things like just not sharing company confidential information, have advocates take responsibility and be respectful, right? So ultimately, it's just not a reflection of the company itself, but it's also a reflection of their personal self. Social media policies do not have to be long and convoluted and dry. KPMG has a wonderful example. They've managed to turn a boring social media policy article into an interactive video so that it is straightforward and easy to understand. It makes it so clear what employees should or should not do. I would really encourage you to take a look at the video, which is hosted on YouTube.
So once you've really built the foundation that Inez has described, it's really then about educating your employees about your employer brand and really how best to represent that. So a few examples here, just to explain that whilst, yes, employees do need to feel comfortable and secure, it's really important to have some training to them on your guidelines, your recommendations. So the training format could be a formal course, a bit like the Adobe Social Shift program, which we'll come to in a second, or it could be a bit more informal, like a lunch and learn session. This is really going to, be about helping people understand what you want them to share and really where you want to share it. And knowing that sharing on a social media network like Facebook is different from a professional platform like LinkedIn. So don't make any assumptions that your employees really understand what works on each platform. That's really where the training can come in. And thinking about policy and guidelines, as Inez has just mentioned, it really is good to put in what is okay to share. And getting the executives involved can really help, when we think about social leadership, which is a focus for so many of our clients at LinkedIn, it really does help employees feel more comfortable that management approves of their activities and their social sharing. And it will ultimately really help you get that long-term buy-in to the program as well. So really see if you can get those key champions on board from your leadership team. Don't forget to build in the training for what your employees can share on social media into your onboarding program. So when you think about new hires and they're coming on board, they're super excited, particularly in those first few weeks. Getting them trained up early on social sharing and advocacy is a great way to, capitalize on that moment where they're really just soaking up knowledge like a sponge. So just kind of pulling all this together and just to build a bit more around a flavor around this for you, the Adobe Social Shift program I referenced just before, that's their program that really educates their employees on the social media guidelines, best practices for sharing, and ultimately just really helps them become brand ambassadors. And when we think about the information we've heard from Adobe about how successful this has been, so far about 30% of Adobe employees have been trained, and more are sharing without any fear of saying or doing something wrong at all. And I think one of the most powerful aspects of the Social Shift program to bring that to life for you even further is that it's built in an assessment, so a way of testing your employees' judgments in various scenarios on social media as well. And that really helps to build up their confidence and their knowledge. And whilst, yes, other companies do take a much less formal approach and think about lunch and learn sessions, the success of the Adobe Social Shift program is really, really evident, as shown even by the Social Look, which is an independent social research company. And from what we understand from them, Adobe's employees are very much recognized as the most social group of employees amongst every tech company. Of course, if you're really going to ask your employees to advocate for your brand, you really need to make sure they know what that brand is. So shockingly, the 2014 workplace survey conducted by Gallup found that only about 41% of employees feel they know what their company stands for and what makes its brand different from its competitors' brands. That's really no surprise when you think about the widespread use of stock photos in content on careers websites, careers pages, to represent the employer brands of multiple organizations. So really do ensure that you share your EVP, your culture, your values with your employees, and ask them to think of ways that these values and this EVP really do come to life for them every day, so that they can really relate to what you're sharing about your brand and start to internalize that messaging. We've shared up here the Netflix example. So some of you may be familiar with their very divisive net culture code slide share. And it's a way that Netflix decided to enable their employees to really know what exactly that was different about their brand and their culture, as well as, of course, the external market. It's really quite divisive. It's quite provocative, and definitely would encourage you to take a look if you're thinking about how do you differentiate. There are messages in there like mediocre performance equals a generous severance package. So it clearly defines what makes Netflix so different to their employees and to the market at the same time. So you really do need to think about employer brand internal marketing and really thinking about doing so widely. You can identify culture champions. It's been one of the most successful things I know at LinkedIn and many other companies that I've worked with and worked for. And they really talk about your brand, your values. They can talk about them at company internal meetings. They can help you distribute or think about some fun swag or objects that you can share around to really get people excited about this. So champions are a really effective way that you can be thinking about to get your message out there at scale. As Inez mentioned before, there is so much in this for employees when you're thinking about an advocacy program. It's really helping them to build their personal brands. So just tactically speaking, to get started on this, it's really trying to help employees to build out their LinkedIn profiles. Ask them to associate themselves with your company on LinkedIn and any other platforms. If you've got multiple brands affiliated with you, the likes of a Unilever umbrella brand, for example, make sure that your employees are attributing themselves to the right brand. We do a lot of simple Rock My Profile sessions here at LinkedIn for our clients, and they can be run for employees and from leaders as well. And of course, there are some tip sheets available online, an increasing number that can really help you run those sessions yourself as well for your employees. What we are increasingly seeing is to really get started, particularly in potentially a more regulated industry. It's easier to for companies to provide their employees with a few sentences to represent their brand. then that's then something they can add to their summary or their job description on their LinkedIn profile. It's a really easy way for them to really display their pride in where they work and their values. So going back to thinking about that internal marketing of your brand, if you're asking your employees for examples of the values and EVP in play every day, they could even reflect on their own examples of how they demonstrate and uphold those values and really think about how they add them to the profile, just so that they can then personalize the message. Furthermore, if you're thinking really about the champions that you've identified, and we highly recommend that you focus on champions, really ask them to set an example so that they have complete profiles, they look great, and then you can share those with employees as examples of brilliant profiles as well.
So an example of employee efficacy through the organization is DBS, the largest bank based in Singapore. And you can hear, and you can see here that employee advocacy program gets cascaded from the top down to Tasha's earlier point, starting with social leadership. Piyush Gupta, the CEO, leads the cause as an influencer on LinkedIn, blogging his opinions about the banking industry and sharing his other professional point of views. Other employees also follow suit very easily, and as you can tell from the image on the right, most employees have professional headshots taken with the DBS logo in the background, which makes them look like really proud company ambassadors. And it needs to be heard and felt all across the organization all the time. So back to Adobe again. Corey Edwards, the director of social media and content marketing at Adobe, he says that it's essential to promote your employee advocacy program internally. Adobe found it critical working with internal communication partners, where they built a marketing plan that included employee competitions, splashy videos, office posters, and giveaways. And as a result, they achieved high awareness and fast adoption. And they also invested tremendous amount of resources on different channels other than email itself. Because no matter how many emails that you send, people still might not know what's going on. Follow up your digital communications with, mini roadshows and present at the all-hands meetings and offer hands-on training sessions monthly. So essentially infusing good old-fashioned face-to-face interactions with your digital communications to build trust and deepen commitment. So once you've educated your employees on the basics, you'll need to activate them and keep them engaged. Create a culture of content rather than keeping a content generation machine. The first step to doing this is to make it really easy for employees to share content. Think about crafting pre-made updates that are easy for employees to simply copy and paste. For example, this week is Employer Brand Week at LinkedIn. I know that our project team has tirelessly, put in tremendous amount of efforts to make sharing a minimal effort by literally crafting out daily status updates for the field to share across their networks and connections. The easier and more idiot-proof that you make it for your employees, the more likely, the more likely they will make it, they will share, and the more effective it will be for you and your program. You will also want to distribute shareable content through multiple outlets. Not every employee will attend a meeting, read a newsletter, or check your intranet, but chances of them doing at least one of these things are slightly higher. Lastly, make sure you ask your employees to reshare your company updates and jobs. As you see from the stats on the left, every piece of content shared does make a difference to not just the job viewed, but even in that small way, it does impact the overall company perception.
So I think this is probably one of my favorite aspects of employee advocacy personally. When we're thinking about content and how you can get your own content, not just that's already out there, think about encouraging your own employees to actually create and write their own content, potentially on their subject matter expertise. Going back to thinking about their personal brands, this can be fantastic to really help them accelerate their personal brand. There are a few examples just up here on the screen that you can see. So the one that's up here is the Adobe Life blog, where employees post regularly. Telstra here in Australia also has an employee blog, which is really active. And their CEO, in fact, writes his own LinkedIn blog post on a variety of different industry topics. So he really is about being very socially engaged, I think, on the platform. LinkedIn Talent Acquisition actually really has used a lot of this employee-curated content, which, as you might expect, given we drink our own champagne at LinkedIn, we do post a lot. That employee-curated content, sharing that with candidates, really does help bring the culture to life. So I would do that typically before a phone interview that I might organize, just so that they can read up on what it's like to work at LinkedIn. Providing some of that guidance to employees can be really key, so make sure that you do show what great looks like. And then asking employees to take photos at internal events, I mean, they're already doing it. And also thinking about the photos they take of their day-to-day working life. Again, they're already doing that, so make sure that they are sharing those photos with you, because this type of employee-generated content really does help instill that sense of pride about where you work, your profession, and also your own personal brand, as mentioned as well. So if you're thinking about where to start with this, it's really thinking about identifying subject matter experts and encouraging them to post thought leadership. This is going to be so powerful for you, because they're really going to be enabling you and arming you moreover with stuff that you can really share as a company update or a tweet, and sponsor it as well, so that you can amplify your reach to the talent that you really care about when you need to hire. So at LinkedIn, that's been really powerful for us, certainly as a talent acquisition team, to actually share those thought leadership posts around. Referrals. Well, engaged employees really will bolster your referrals hiring. It's really important to make sure that they're actively involved in your referrals program. So leveraging automated matching tools like what we've recently released as a product personally here at LinkedIn, which is the LinkedIn referrals tool, can really help facilitate the referrals program. For the way that we think about referrals hiring, though, it's really important to know that employees have to really have your referrals program top of mind. Be sure to really market that and really get creative. I love the example of GoDaddy, who handed out a mirror to their employees that said, "This is what a GoDaddy recruiter looks like." I thought that was really cool, a bit cheesy, but really cool. And a company in India parked a motorbike in their office that a person could win if they referred an engineering manager into their business. So recognizing those successful referrals is really a great way to leverage them. I mean, we're really excited about the LinkedIn referrals tool, and certainly for me as an ex-recruiter, it saves so much time, because it really helps match up your employees with the network, and serves up potential network connections that your employees could start recommending. It integrates with heaps of different applicant tracking systems out there as well, looking for even further integration as the product rolls out. And just a final point on recognition and thinking about referrals. It doesn't really have to be about monetary rewards. I think, as Inez mentioned, those can be really powerful. But as you think about the likes of Google, whose referrals program is pretty world-class, their experience specifically was that money actually had a really minimal impact on the quality and the quantity of the referral candidates they had coming through. So recognizing the referring employees in front of their peers and their leaders is one of the ways that they found better amplification of their referrals program and better results as well. So really the last step of creating an employee advocacy program is how you measure it. So this is definitely meant to be an iterative process. So it is about continually measuring, reinforcing, and really looking at all of the different metrics that you've decided to measure. So when you're thinking about the types of metrics to measure, these would be things like, the number of employees that are participating in your program. It might be, the number of champions, the number of employee profiles on LinkedIn and their completeness, for example. You could look at the collective reach of your updates on LinkedIn or on other channels as well, to see the number of people that are actually seeing your posts and updates that are being shared by your employees, and see how that affects the overall reach you have. Employee satisfaction and retention over time, which you can obviously get through surveys of your own, they can be really powerful as two different types of metrics to consider. And then lastly, one, as I said, that's pretty dear to my heart in my background in recruitment, is definitely that the percentage of hires that you get from referrals. That could be a really good metric to look at. And once those sorts of metrics are in place, as I said, it is very much iterative, so you are really meant to continue evaluating what's working, looking at those metrics, and reporting on those to your leadership team. And of course, don't forget, as you're continuing to measure your success, maintain that ongoing training, really sharing metrics and successes with them continually, so that you're keeping your program of employee advocacy and referrals particularly top of mind. of course, just like any initiative that you're putting in place in the HR, recruitment, or marketing world, everything has to come back to the business outcomes that you're trying to drive through. So just thrown up here on the screen, you've got a few key business outcomes that our clients are really driving towards at a kind of holistic level. So the good news is that really all of these metrics that we've thrown up here can all be impacted to a degree by employee advocacy. So there's a variety of different business areas here and impacts, but it could be things like improved retention rates, increased customer satisfaction, to improve quality of hire and many, many others. So these sorts of impacts are really measurable and can show the power of advocacy to your business leaders and the wider organization. Just a final couple of things just to note, really as we're thinking about the most powerful stats to leave you with, two that both Inez and I agreed on was that companies with a higher number of employees sharing, we know, are 58% more likely to attract talent and 20% more likely to retain talent as well. So that social sharing really does have an impact, particularly on the attraction and retention of great people. And that's just a couple of the tangible benefits that employee advocacy can have.
Well, Cash, over the last 30 minutes, we did go through tons of content. But if asked to distill and recap the key takeaways, I would feel that it will essentially be these 4 points. Employees are probably the most effective channel to harness. No messenger is more impactful than our own employees ourselves. In order to fully leverage on the employee channel, make sure that you also make it for your employees to get involved. Always start from the top down and engage leadership to drive adoption. And as with all new initiatives, it is also important to track and measure how it is facilitating business impact. Always start small and be fully aligned with your stakeholders on how you're tracking success. Now, I'm going to turn this back to Alicia. I believe there are some questions that she's managing on the chat. Over to you, Alicia.
Thanks so much, Inez. Yes, there's been a few questions that have come through to me directly. Let me just pick a couple for you. So it seems that we have a few small organisations on the line who probably don't have the extensive both talent and marketing teams to really push out, I think, large-scale programs. Any advice for organisations that have a leaner team?
Yeah, I can take this one. So I think organizations with small organizations are probably the best place to start a program like this. Essentially, it is like a David versus Goliath kind of a situation. If you don't have resources, an employee advocacy program is where you really can make a difference with your own employees and punch above your weight. You just need to be brave enough to do that and come up with some really great content. Sometimes I feel that with small organizations, the advantage that they have over large organizations for this is that it's just a lot easier to galvanize people because of your small numbers. So essentially, it's really about if everybody's in the same location, it's really about just getting scrappy and just letting everybody know what kind of message you want them to share and what the agenda is, right? And they can, and a lot of times they really can execute it a lot better than big companies because of their agility and just the speed of reaction.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Inez. We have the questions that come through, I think, for Tash. How would you advise companies who are socially conservative? So, they want to present on their webpage, not so much of the social selling.
Yeah, it does come up a lot with some of the companies that I work with that might be in, say, an industry that's quite bound by regulation or, as you say, a little bit conservative. So, what we tend to say is it really does start at the top. So really think about, as we've discussed on the webcast today, just how you can engage your leaders to understand the power of social sharing and employee advocacy. So a lot of the resistance that we see from leaders who are then leading these conservative companies is just because they don't quite understand what you're trying to achieve and the different social networks that are out there now. They may hear social media and think one of the brand new networks out there that are potentially less focused on the professional audience. So really, again, when you're thinking about social leaders, one way you can help educate them is, just saying, let's dip our toe in the water and start thinking about sharing a bit more on the professional networks. We actually had some of our big banking clients who initially had some quite strong resistance from their leaders around the idea of social sharing and advocacy, and it just took a bit of time and a bit of work focused on helping them have great LinkedIn profiles, for example, doing a few Rock My Profile sessions with that leadership team, and just really helping build their knowledge. And that's really how it has been helpful for them in those more conservative and potentially more regulated businesses as well.
Wonderful. So I think in some organisations, the C-level or CEO or other ELT members see employee advocacy or employee engagement potentially as a cost to the business. Do you have any ideas or thoughts on how people on the line could potentially overcome this as a barrier?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's similar to what I was just mentioning, but I think in terms of getting your leaders involved, it's really about starting at that macroeconomic level. So helping them understand some of the trends in the market that are really causing various organizations to have to amend their current, often very successful hiring strategy. So now having to do, more in a very much competitive market for new skills like UX design that are coming through that didn't exist 5 years ago, let alone existed as part of a university course. So really starting with the macroeconomic trends to explain, we need to be doing more in our hiring and branding strategy as it gets more competitive for the best talent. And starting there with some really impactful stats, and there's a wealth of research from LinkedIn, but also from various other partners like Corporate Executive Board and some of the consulting firms that can give you some really good ammunition to fuel your stats with the CEOs and executives you work with. So I would say start from their level, start thinking about the macroeconomic trends, and then really prove the potential impact that can be had through various case studies that you can find as well. I think we've just had one more question come through. So what are some of the employee referral rewards that LinkedIn use? Someone's just asked. So happy to share a little bit here. I think for us, we've actually toyed with various ways of rewarding referrals at LinkedIn over time. We still do have a monetary reward for employees, but it's just one flat amount. Really, for us, it's been far more about recognizing behavior, as I mentioned, as a kind of best practice earlier on in the webcast. It's been about, thanking those people that have referred great people in and putting them in front of the rest of the company at various meetings. And what we've also been doing is just really kind of driving awareness of, the success of the people that have been referred in as well. So if we're, recognizing someone's great performance, then we can also, not forget to mention that they were actually referred in by somebody. So we can just, as a side note, say, thank you so much, Alicia, for referring Tash in. She's a legend, but Alicia, great job. Really appreciate you constantly thinking about the best talent for LinkedIn. So recognition can be monetary, but for us, it's been more about the behaviors.
Okay, guys, I think we're getting close to top of the hour now, so we might actually round up all of the questions. I just wanted to take a moment to thank both Inez and Tash for a very informative and engaging session. I think this is something that a lot of organisations, small or large, can really get some benefit fairly quickly and easily for their business. So this, as mentioned at the start of the session, we'll send this recording to you early next week. Please feel free to share that with your colleagues. Just a few other updates for Employer Brand Week. We do have a Twitter chat that's happening that I have to share the details in the chat box. Kicking off in 5 minutes for anybody based in Australia and New Zealand. We'd love you to engage, share your thoughts. Alternatively, I've also shared the Employer Brand Week microsite where we have a host of content that you can continue to engage with in the coming week. Mostly, thank you for taking the time today to join today's session, and we look forward to you joining the next. Have a great afternoon.